What's up everyone, Mario here. I want to talk about failure, and failure is something that not everybody wants to experience more of. I get that. I understand that it's painful, it's embarrassing, it's disappointing, but it's also necessary for your dating success. Hear me out. Look, you can't always be successful, and you're going to have your bumps and bruises along the way. That's how you're going to learn and get better. But we want to minimize that, because here's the thing: no matter what, you're gonna, if you to get to your desired outcome, you're going to have some detours along the way. You're gonna have some ups and downs, and you're gonna have some setbacks, and sometimes you're gonna just have these ultimate colossal failures where you just drop and bottom out, and just like, geez, am I really on the path towards my success? Yes. If you're not quitting and you're continuing, you are still on the path toward your success. It's just like eventually you just keep on taking that action. But what we're trying to do with game is minimize those failures. So, if you are going to have those failures, let's not have a setback that takes you back here. Let's have a setback that takes you back here. Or let's not have a failure on the level of taking you way down here. Let's have a failure that just makes you go and a little blip down. All right. So what we're going to do today is offer you 5 sort of thoughts that I want to bring into your mind. 5 reasons why failure is actually necessary for your dating success. All right. Let's get to it. First of all, if you are failing, that means that you're trying, and trying is effort. Effort is action. Guess what? Most people don't like to take action. Look around. Most people, whether at your job or in their personal lives, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's asking that girl for her number, whether it's, making the first move with online dating and messaging a person, most people don't take action. They get paralyzed, and they don't do anything because they're scared. What are they scared of? Well, pain, but the pain from failure. So what you need to understand is, if you're failing, you're doing more than most everyone else. All right, you're setting yourself at least in the top 20% just by taking action. You can basically out effort your competition, even if they're more talented. This happens all the time. A great example is, let's go to the world of sales. Everyone has bought something, and everyone at some point, you're even like with dating and online dating, you're selling yourself. Here's the thing. If you are the world's best salesman, and one day you can rack up a ton of sales, right? And then, maybe even you can just call it a day early, and you can be like, hey, I made 20 sales. I did pretty well. I'm going to go home. Well, you've got someone who's worked 4 hours and they've made a bunch of sales, and you've got someone else who is less talented, much less talented. They're not the best people person, but you know what they do? They knock on a lot of doors, they work longer hours, they make more phone calls, they have more in-person visits, they do extra. Guess what? It might take them 12 hours, but they make just as many sales as the salesman who was killing it, but for 4 hours. So what happens there is that effort is like this major equalizer. So how does this play out? Well, for example, in the dating world, if you're trying to develop attraction from someone, you have to walk over sometimes and introduce yourself, right? Very scary. What do most people do? Nothing. If you can be someone who takes action, it doesn't mean that you're going to succeed like all the time. You won't. It doesn't make you a bad person. But what's going to happen is, if you introduce yourself enough, someone's going to be receptive to it. And you along the way will actually, learn some skills, or refine your skill in doing that. You're going to get more comfortable, and you're going to know a little bit better what to say. You're going to become more familiar with the responses that you get and how you can respond to those responses. But ultimately, you don't have to be the most talented. You didn't have to be the natural. You didn't have to be the best flirt, the most charming. You need to put in more effort, So basically, talent is great, but if talent doesn't work hard work can trump talent, or it can be that equalizing effect. So I definitely want you to understand that if you're failing, you are trying. You are, it could be online dating where, it's so hard to be successful with online dating, because not everybody responds to your messages. At least if you were to walk over to somebody in person, you would have some sort of outcome, you would know what happened. But with online dating, often you don't get a response because that's just the world. It's tough to get a response. People are busy, people have a lot of messages, people have to choose. Maybe people look at your message and don't like it. There's all sorts of reasons. But it's like that salesman. If you keep on sending out more messages than someone else who's not trying, even if they are more talented, even if they're better looking, even if they're more charming, even if they're a better flirt, even if they're more successful, even if they have things that you don't have, if you out-effort them, you will either equalize the competition or you will surpass your competition. But it starts with, failing. You're trying, you're making effort, you're taking action. So I want you to understand that if you're failing, it means you're trying and that you're taking action, and that is an amazing thing. Hold on to that. So for that reason, you need to embrace you need to spin your failures positively. Understand with each failure, you're basically probably outworking your competition, and that's what you need to do regardless of your talent. So you can be talented, work hard, and you'll be talented and outwork your competition. Or you're not as talented, you don't have as many things to offer, but you put in more action. So regardless of that failure, we're on the path to success if we're putting in the effort and taking action. All right, second way that failure is necessary for your dating success is that there's no better motivator. Failure provides the best motivation for action, and specifically the uncomfortable action that you're avoiding, the action that you're just like dreading, like, I don't want to do this. Look, we've all been there, It's difficult to walk over and introduce yourself to somebody, but guess what? If your failure to have a relationship or someone that is connecting with you, if that results in some painful aloneness, where your Fridays, your Saturdays, your Sundays, your Mondays, your Tuesdays, your Wednesdays, every day of the week is just lonely for you, and you feel like that sort of failure eventually will be that kick in the pants that says, get your shit together and you're going to walk over there, because we know how this ends. If you don't, you'll be unhappy. And that failure is sometimes enough to make you fired up and motivated enough to take the action necessary. I had a client who was at that point for years. He wasn't ready to take very uncomfortable action. Because it's tough, especially as a man, to say, like, I need help. You really have to, as a man, we have to basically look failure in the eye and say, I can't take this anymore. I need to ask for help. That's kind of how men function. But what happened was he hit this monumental failure in his life, where a girl that he'd been pining for many years, he had been stuck in the friend zone, and he made this attempt to take a trip with her. And his intention was that, by the end of the trip, she was going to see him as romantic material, and as a boyfriend, and not just a good friend. So guess what? He went on the trip, and he was shut down, slept on the couch every night. Man, that was embarrassment for him, because for him, everybody knew where he was going. His friends, his family, they knew what was going on. They knew he's making a move, and when he came back, they obviously knew the result. It was not good. That failure, however, provided the motivation for him to ask for help, and that was the moment where he was just able to face that failure and be like, enough is enough. And at that point, his life changed, because he asked me for help, and we started working together. And no, we didn't actually get him the girl, but we did better. We helped develop him and help improve him to become more desirable and to be a stronger individual in so many different ways. He had just so much more to offer. We really built him up with some great qualities and built upon the great things about him, helped him feel more comfortable. We did a lot of work with him, and by the end, he had all sorts of new self-confidence. He had skills in how to speak to women. He was more comfortable saying what he really felt, and that made a big difference in his interactions with women. And guess what? He started doing really well in his career. He started getting promotions, because other people were like, who is this guy? But he's like leadership material now. He wasn't 6 months ago, but now we'd like to promote you. It also ended up in him having a girlfriend, and the sort of happy ending that we're looking for. But where does it start? For him, it started with a monumental failure. So understand that, we're all going to have our highs and lows, but sometimes with that low comes the fuel for the action that you'll need to take. Because guarantee you, like, if he had not had that failure, or if it hadn't been such a colossal failure, he wouldn't have felt the need to, he couldn't have, it basically was undeniable after that major failure. You couldn't deny it. He couldn't even lie to himself. Oftentimes we lie to ourselves and we bullshit ourselves, and we can bullshit to others and think that they believe it and hope that they believe it. But, this was just something that he couldn't sit with anymore, and it just got to him. But understand, that can be, your failures can be the fuel for the action that you have to take that takes you from that failure to that success. So failure might be your friend more than you realize as far as impacting your dating success, because if you only achieve successes will just be taken for granted, and you'll get lazy. You'll think that you don't need to do anything and that the world just caters to you. But when you fail, you realize, holy shit, the world's competitive. I got to get better if I want better results. And I can't deny that I have failed here, and that shit was painful. I don't want to be going through that anymore. I need to do something different. And that is the step that you need to take many times for the success to eventually arrive. All right. Third reason that failure is necessary for your dating success is that it teaches you lessons of contrast. So many of us, we don't know what we really like until we experience what we don't like. And for many of you out there, like, we've all basically learned something from previous relationships that were failures. Now, maybe you don't have the most romantic relationship experience. Fine, there's some of you watching this video whom that applies to, but you've all had friendship experiences, and you've all had friendships that went sour. What did you learn from that? Did you sometimes learn that somebody wasn't as good as a friend, and maybe you were falsely or blindly thinking that a friendship was more, and you kind of overestimated the friendship, and you learned the lesson to, not just think that someone had your back no matter what. Maybe there was it matters, I don't have your back. Or maybe you just trusted, way too much, and you were let down, and you learned to, I need to trust people less. I need to be a little bit more self-reliant. Bottom line is, from broken friendships, you've learned some lessons, even if it's something like, hey, I need to keep some things to myself, so it's not used against me. It doesn't matter. We've all learned lessons from friendships, but those lessons have been learned oftentimes from failure. So that same thing happens with relationships. When you enter a relationship, 99% of the time, they're not going to end in happily ever after. They're going to end after a few phone calls, some text messaging. All of a sudden, that person doesn't want to hear from you again. That's a failure. Maybe you go out a few times, and then things fall apart. You stop seeing each other, and there's a loss of interest on that. That's a failure. Maybe it ends after months and you guys actually have become a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, but it fails. All right, what happens is you can still learn lessons of contrast from that failure. You can learn, I don't like this. I like this, but this didn't work for me. Because when you see a failure, you can just start piecing it together backwards. Like, why did this fail? Well, it failed because I like honesty. I never really identified that that's one of my core values, is honesty. And this person, even on the smallest things, they wouldn't be honest. That's the sort of stuff that you can learn from your failures. You can learn that, like, I'm the sort of way that someone handles conflict. You can be, maybe you identify that you were unfulfilled in a failing relationship because they wouldn't communicate their complaints to you. They wouldn't ever tell you that they didn't like anything. They just blew up. And what you learned from that was, I need someone who will tell me when something's wrong, not just hold it in the inside. So there are all sorts of lessons, and you've been there. You've learned those lessons from friendships, from relationships, from family relationships, romantic relationships. We've all been there. So lessons of contrast are greatly developed and understood from failure. So embrace your failures. It's not so bad. It's of course something that we don't want to experience, but in the end, we learn lessons that are very impactful. And when we're talking about your dating success, failure is going to teach you so much, and it will teach you those lessons of contrast that you would not otherwise have known. So, I like to tell everybody that I work with, like, if you date more people, haven't you experienced this? Like, you went on, when you were first, maybe you still haven't dated that much, but when you had dated even less, you didn't know what you liked. So you're giving everybody a chance, and maybe then you start screening and being like, I didn't like this. This is not the sort of person I go for. I don't go for the jock type. I don't like someone who is, into the party scene. I don't, we learn a whole lot more about what we don't like, and that's really easy to identify the don'ts that we don't want to have again, or that didn't work for us. But those are lessons of contrast that you build up through experiences. So can you get through a whole lot of dating experiences without a lot of failure? No way. Especially when I told you that 99% of them are not ending in happily ever after. So what you need to embrace is that failure is going to happen, but from those failures, you're going to learn a lot of lessons of contrast. And with each lesson, you're going to learn so much more. I like to kind of think about it. People say that, as you get older, like you get into your mid-30s and you're just like, there's fewer people who are compatible with me because I'm so picky. How did you get so picky? You got so picky through experiences, through a lot of failures and a lot of lessons learned. And a lot of those lessons learned dealt with contrast. So keep that in mind. Next, the fourth way that failure is impacting your dating success is that it's an indicator that you should be aware of that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And when you're stepping outside your comfort zone, that's where the growth happens. If you do the same thing that you're comfortable with, you don't grow as a person, you don't get better, you just remain stagnant. And a lot of our lives is a whole lot of the same routine over and over. Think about it. I'll bet today you probably woke up around the same time that you always do. Probably had the same breakfast that you always do. Probably took the same route to work that you always do. Our life is basically a whole lot of habits and routine. Why? Because it makes it easier for us to not think. But when it comes to your dating life, is that a great thing to not think? No. The people who are thinking and forced to think are those who are basically stepping outside of their comfort zone. And it doesn't mean that you have to take 50 steps outside your comfort zone. Start with one, take a couple, but you have to get outside that comfort zone. And when you're failing because you're stepping outside that comfort zone. So, on one hand, I know you're not feeling the pain, you're not enjoying that sort of experience. But what you should be doing is considering that because you are failing, pat yourself on the back and be like, good job, I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. And that makes me stronger, that makes me better, that makes me grow, all right? A body doesn't grow, a person, like in exercise, a body doesn't grow unless you push it beyond its comfort, where it's forced to adapt. It has to either grow stronger or grow larger as a muscle to adapt to the loads that are expected of it. Well, when you step outside of your dating comfort zone and you fail, guess what? You're going to grow. If you practice walking over to introducing yourself, cold approach is really difficult and we don't like to do it. We don't like cold approaches when you basically walk over to a complete stranger that you're somewhat interested in getting to know and you start a conversation out of nothing. It's kind of scary, right? Scary for most people, but guess what? If you were to face that fear, you would absolutely experience a lot of failure. It wouldn't end in, hey, here's my number. Yeah, we should absolutely go out. Oh man, you're so amazing. It doesn't work out like that most times, but most times it's not necessarily going to be like, I hate you, you're the world's worst person, splash, drink in your face. It doesn't necessarily work out like that either. There's usually 80% of the time, it's not on any of those extremes, it's in the middle, all right? And in the middle, there's still a lot of failures because it's not someone giving you their number, it's just someone nodding their head like, oh yeah, good to meet you, and then they move on. Fine, but you're not supposed to succeed like 80% of the time. That's not how you succeed. If you succeeded 80% of the time, you would have the most busy life. You couldn't handle all that sort of opportunity in your life. So it might be a good thing you don't succeed that much. But with those failures, you're growing because you stepped outside that comfort zone. And because you stepped outside that comfort zone, you learn something. You learn like, geez, whatever I do, don't walk over and introduce yourself and stumble over your words. Okay, next time I'm gonna take a breath and try and be more relaxed. We're gonna start refining our approach. Even if you have no idea how to do it, you will learn lessons of what not to do, even if you don't know what to do. So that's going to play out in the online dating scene. What happens? Guys, I'll tell you this. The guys eventually catch on that, some people are going to be slower than others. And ladies, I understand your complaint, because guys send a lot of stupid messages because they're not great communicators that are like, hey, what's up? How are you? Those aren't big on offering value. They're not very interesting. They're very basic, and women aren't excited by them. So it's not really rewarded very much. Sure, could you have some success with it? Sure, sometimes, but is it a great strategy? Hell no. And probably, it works better. The better looking you are for online dating, the more that you can get away with using such a shitty opening message. I call that the hot to opener balance scale. If you're really hot, you can more often get away with saying hi and receive a warm welcome. But if you're, if you're a guy and you're 4 feet tall, you're 500 pounds and you have acne and, whatever, you're one eye here and the other eye here, you probably can't get away with hi and achieve success. So, what we learn as men in general is we learn, and ladies, you need to pay attention to, because you ladies are messaging guys first now. You use the Bumble app and you have to message first. When you message, hey, you're doing the same thing that guys do. And eventually what happens is people catch on sooner or later. I'm not having success. I need to alter my approach. And if they stick with it long enough, they figure out one of the things I need to alter with my approach is my messages. Okay. So that's one way in which failure is teaching you through your, stepping outside your comfort zone. Like, I'm uncomfortable messaging, but I'll do it. If you do it enough and you step outside your comfort zone, inevitably you learn lessons and improve. Whether someone is guiding you about what is the right thing to do, or if you just have to learn things about what not to do. All right. Number 5, the 5th way that failure is impacting your dating success is that it dispels your fears. All right. What happens when you are failing a lot? You kind of become desensitized to whatever that failure was, and you're not as scared of it anymore. You're like, okay, so if I walk over to this guy and introduce myself, hi, I'm Marsha. I'm terrified of doing that, but it was a failure. The guy wasn't interested, but it didn't go as bad as I thought. I thought I was going to just be like embarrassed. I thought, like we think worst case scenario a lot. We think, geez, this guy's going to turn around and chuckle with all his friends. Look at Marsha. Ooh, it's going to be so embarrassing. It didn't happen. And what happens is, even if you do experience a failure, it's not as bad. And because of that, you become desensitized to that fear of that failure, and you're able to then take more action. If you're a woman with online dating, you're very probably uncomfortable sending the first message. But if you learn the lesson that it's not so bad if you actually message first, a lot of guys like it. A lot of guys will appreciate that. You'll get a lot of responses. Will all of them? No, that doesn't happen to anybody. Male, female, you could be Brad Pitt or Beyonce. It doesn't matter. You will not get a response from everyone. It doesn't work out like that. But what we can do is, dispel our fears. We can desensitize ourselves to those fears that are basically, in most cases, they paralyze us unless we face them and become desensitized to them and overcome them. For example, how many of you out there are just terrified of asking somebody to meet, whether you met them in person or online? You're afraid to actually just say the words, "Hey, we should grab a cup of coffee sometime." You're terrified of that, and I understand that. However, the more often that you do it, the less you're going to become fearful of that, and it's going to become easier and easier, because you're going to understand that the things that you fear don't necessarily really happen, and you can't really understand that until you go through failure. So, for example, if someone doesn't accept your invite to coffee, Okay, but what was your fear? Was your fear that they would say no, or was it that you were going to be embarrassed? They're going to tell the whole office, Jerry just asked me to drink. Oh my God, Jerry's lame, da da da. We're so fearful of all sorts of different things. If you're at the gym and you're making eyes with someone, but you're fearful of, just walking over and saying, hey, I'm such and such, and, eventually leading to, we should get together sometime. Like, there's a little coffee shop, right next door. I'm going to grab a coffee. What are you doing after this workout? We're terrified of that. But you're terrified of failing at that, okay? It's not that you're necessarily terrified of walking over and asking somebody. It's that you're terrified of it not going well, of failing. But what you're going to experience is that the failure is not going to happen like you thought. In our world, the world of our mind, we always, what do? We jump to like the worst case scenario, like the worst possibility. We're like that's going to happen. It doesn't. Very few times will something like that ever happen to you, actually. So how can I get through to you on that one? Well, I can get through to you just by telling you. Telling you plants a seed, but when you actually go through the experience of the failure, you'll understand, like, geez, I've never actually had a drink thrown in my face. I've never had someone laugh at me at the gym when I asked them out. I never had someone tell the whole office that I asked Wendy to drinks sometime. That never happened. Instead, there are all sorts of shades of rejection and failure, and also throw in the successes that are sprinkled in there as well. But the big lesson is, the more you put yourself out there, the more you do fail, the more you see that failure doesn't actually hurt as much as you think, that people don't really care, like if you fail. Like, no one's really going to pay attention to you and, spread it across Twitter. It's not going to go across the social media universe. It doesn't work like that. So failure is going to be critical to your dating success, because it's going to remove your fear. So actually, if you're failing, you're not going to fail forever. You're going to inevitably get better, even if you don't know what you're doing. But along that path, or you're going to become desensitized to your fear of failure. And that's going to be empowering. It's going to allow you to take more chances, to do the things that you're more afraid of. And then you move on to new fears, because you're going to conquer some, and then you'll just have new fears. If one of your fears was, what will people think if I set up an online dating profile? Nobody's going to think anything. Nobody's in your personal life is going to give a shit. You're going to find that out, and then you can move on to a new fear. What if this person doesn't message me? Well, you're going to do that enough times and fail enough times, and you can become desensitized. And then you can move on to, well, I'm so scared of, failing at if I ask someone to meet for a drink or coffee or something. You do that enough times, you're going to basically become desensitized to that and move on to a new fear to challenge yourself with. So there you have it. 5 reasons why failure is absolutely essential to your dating success. And what we're trying to do is shift your mind, because there's a big shift that needs to happen. Because if you keep on trying to put yourself in a position where you're avoiding failure, that's not the best way to live. It's not going to be the path towards greater success. And what we're trying to do is stack the odds in favor of greater success. So how can we do that? Can we have greater success just by like sitting on the bench and, like not practicing a skill? No, we need to practice that skill and, go through taking some lumps, taking some bruises, and going through some of those failures, but understanding that we're alive, we're here to live another day, we can give it another chance, and probably the failure didn't hurt, the pain wasn't as bad as we had thought it would be. So pay attention and try and incorporate those 5 ways that failure is absolutely impacting your dating success, and think differently, embrace it, give it a different spin. Be like, when I'm failing, awesome, because that means I'm taking more action, or it's going to provide me fuel for the action that I need to take to achieve that success, or my failure is going to teach me lessons of contrast. I'm going to learn more about myself and what I want and what others, how I work with others, or it's that failure means that I'm challenging myself and stepping outside my comfort zone, or you can say that failure, Awesome. If I'm failing, I know that I'm gonna get stronger and more kind of like develop that callus to that fear of failure. It won't hurt so bad because I've done it before and it doesn't hurt so bad. So you callus, kind of develop that mental callus towards the experience. So use that and put that into effect in your life now. Try and do it today. Think about it this week and implement this in your mindset when we all experience inevitable failure for the rest of our life. Spin it positively, and I guarantee you it will be something small that is going to impact your dating success. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated the content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you believe that learning about better strategies for life and love is advantageous, I invite you to join Get Game Group. Membership is free, open to men and women, offers weekly game video lessons, and a weekly mailbag for member submissions. Click the link in the description to join.